My name is David. I'm 46 years old, just an ordinary man with a stable job, a two-story house in the suburbs, and a family that from the outside looked picture perfect. We have two teenage kids, smart, independent, and a wife named Anna. Gentle, attentive, thoughtful in every little detail. I don't know when I started losing her. Maybe it was when work got busier. Maybe when the kids started needing more of our attention. Or maybe it was the day I stopped asking her, "Are you okay?" and truly waiting for an answer. I didn't cheat, I didn't hit her, I didn't drink or yell, but it turns out you can still break someone's heart without ever laying a hand on them, just by slowly forgetting to see them. I remember how much I used to love Anna's eyes. There was something so tender in the way she listened, in the way she would sit beside me when I came home exhausted from work. She never demanded, never complained. Everything at home just ran smoothly, like a well-programmed machine. I worked, came home, ate dinner, watched TV, slept, repeat. I thought that was enough to call it a happy family. Until Noah came. Noah is my wife's nephew, my nephew by marriage, 19 years old, quiet, with a maturity that made him seem older than he was. His mother, Anna's sister, had passed away suddenly after an illness. Anna cried all night, and the next morning, she looked at me and said, "I think we should have Noah stay with us for a while." I nodded. I didn't object. I didn't really care that much either. I just thought it was the right thing to do. But I didn't realize that in the space I had created with my distractions, my half-hearted responses, my long hours in the study and short hours in the living room, something had begun to shift. I started noticing changes, not in Noah, but in Anna. She smiled more. She started dressing more neatly in the mornings. I assumed it was just the comfort of having family around. That's what I believed until one night, I saw them sitting in the kitchen after midnight, the light dim, Anna leaning in to listen as Noah spoke, her eyes glowing with a warmth I hadn't seen when she looked at me in a long time. I turned away quietly, telling myself I was overthinking. I'm not the jealous type. I trust my wife. But I also started feeling like she was slowly slipping away from me, and I didn't know how to pull her back. Dinner became quieter. When I asked, "How was your day?" she would just smile and say, "Same as usual." But her eyes, they stopped searching for mine. I could see Noah noticing her in the way a man notices a woman. He complimented her cooking, listened to every word she said, even cooked for her sometimes. I used to do those things too, didn't I? When did I stop? I knew something had changed, though I couldn't name it. One night, I came home late from a company party. I walked into the bedroom and found Anna already asleep, or pretending to be. Her eyes shut tight, her lips pressed together like she was holding back from saying something. I just turned off the light and lay beside her. But I couldn't sleep a minute that night. The next morning, I woke to a note on the kitchen table. "Have breakfast first. I'm heading out for a bit." No heart, no signature. She still came home, still cooked, still cleaned, but in her eyes, something had shattered. And I was no longer the person who got to know what it was. A week later, I came home and found Noah packing his things. I asked, "Where are you going?" He simply said, "School. I think it's time." Anna didn't say a word. She just stood there, hands clenched, eyes red and swollen. I turned to her and asked, "What's going on?" She looked at me for a long time, then slowly said, "Do you even see me anymore, David?" I froze. She went on, "I'm not talking about that. I mean truly seeing me. I've been here, right next to you, all these years. And you've looked right through me, like I'm just another piece of furniture in this house." I didn't know what to say. Every excuse caught in my throat. I never meant to diminish her. I never meant to make her feel invisible, but I hadn't seen her. I hadn't truly paid attention. And that was the worst part. I wanted to hold her and say I was sorry, that I could change, that I would learn how to listen again. But what I did, out of habit more than anything, was stay silent. And it was that silence that pushed her even further away. Noah left the next morning. Before he got in the car, he said to me, "I know I shouldn't have stayed this long." I didn't answer, just nodded. Because I wasn't sure what had really happened either, but the way Anna looked at Noah as he drove off, that look wasn't for a nephew. It was for someone who had seen her, who had reached a part of her I had neglected for far too long. I began quietly watching my wife like a man sitting backstage, looking at a stage he once belonged to. She started waking up earlier. She took better care of herself. She spent time reading, listening to music, and some nights she didn't lie next to me anymore. Like, I don't know what's waiting for me. We haven't talked about divorce. She hasn't left, but I can feel it. It's no longer a question of if, but when. And the most painful part, I understand why. I understand why a woman like her would feel lonely in her own home. I understand why a young man, also lonely, could fill the space I no longer bothered to. I'll blame Noah. I don't blame Anna. I blame myself. I'm David. I didn't lose my wife to another man. I lost her to my own indifference, to not seeing her, to not hearing her, to forgetting that love doesn't die from betrayal. Love dies in silence. After Noah left, the house returned to its usual rhythm, quiet, steady, seemingly peaceful. But something didn't return with it. Yeah, she was still there, still made coffee every morning, still called the kids down for dinner, but she wasn't there in the way I used to believe. She had withdrawn, gently, decisively, not with words, but with distance. One morning, I woke up and she wasn't beside me. Instead of her familiar scent on the pillow, there was only cold fabric in an empty room. I went downstairs and found her sitting on the porch, wrapped in a coat, holding a cup of tea, staring into the garden as if searching for answers to a question I didn't have the courage to ask. I used to think that as long as I didn't cheat, didn't argue, didn't hurt her, I was fulfilling my role as a husband. But the truth is more brutal than that. Love is an action, a choice you make every single day, and I hadn't chosen her for years. I started trying awkwardly. I came home earlier, washed some dishes, folded some laundry. Some days I'd ask her, "Are you okay today?" But the answer was always a faint smile and same as always. She didn't open up anymore. I hadn't given her the safety to do that, and now I couldn't expect to take it back so easily. I wanted to touch her hand, to hold her like I used to when we were young. But every time I got close, she would pull away. Not with her feet, but with her eyes. We had dinner in silence, the kids buried in their phones, and I sat there, feeling like a stranger in my own family. One evening, after the kids had gone upstairs, I walked into our bedroom and found Anna sitting on the edge of the bed, holding an old piece of paper. I recognized it as one of the notes Noah had left behind. I'd once seen her hide it in the drawer. I didn't say anything. She didn't flinch. I simply asked, "You still keep it?" She nodded slightly without turning around. "I keep them all," she said, "not because I want to remember, but because I don't want to forget what it felt like to be seen." I sat beside her. It had been so long since we were that close. "I'm sorry, Anna," I said. She looked at me. Her eyes were sad, but no longer angry. That scared me even more. "Sorry for what?" she asked. I took a deep breath. "For making you feel alone, even when I was right next to you." She pressed her lips together, her eyes shimmering. "You know," she whispered, "the greatest loneliness isn't being alone. It's being next to someone who no longer sees you." I nodded, and it felt like my heart was being squeezed in a fist. "I need to go away for a while," she said. "Not to leave, just to breathe, to find myself again." I didn't beg. I didn't plead, because I knew the worst thing I had ever done to the woman I loved was not realizing she had lost herself while standing right beside me. The next morning, Anna got in the car with a few small bags and drove toward the coast, the place we once promised we'd visit every summer, but never did. I stood at the door, fists clenched, eyes following her until the car disappeared from view. The kids didn't know much. I simply said, "Your mom needs a little break." They nodded, a bit confused, but didn't ask more. The house fell silent again. But this time, I could hear every echo inside me louder than ever before. I started writing in a journal, writing the things I never said to Anna, writing apologies that came far too late, writing out fears I never admitted, that I wasn't just afraid of losing her, but that maybe I no longer deserved to keep her. I still don't know when Anna will come back or if she ever will. All I know is this: if she does, I'll be the first to see her walk through that door. And this time, I'll look at her as if I'm seeing her for the very first time, knowing exactly how lucky I am. And if she doesn't come back, I'll keep writing. I'll keep teaching our children to truly see and hear the women in their lives so they don't repeat my mistake. Because sometimes losing someone who once loved you doesn't happen because you did something wrong. It happens because you didn't do what was right soon enough. You'll read this letter one morning as the sun rises and the house sinks once again into that familiar silence we both know too well. I haven't left. I've only stepped outside to search for the part of myself I lost somewhere along the rhythm of our life. Maybe the most painful thing isn't betrayal, it's the moment I realized I hadn't been myself for a long time. I used to think that as long as we didn't fight, didn't fall apart, then we were okay. But I was wrong. The silence between us grew a little more each day. Questions left unanswered. Eyes that no longer searched for each other in the kitchen or the hallway. I waited for something to change, but then I understood. Change only happens when you're brave enough to walk away. I'm not writing this to place blame. I'm writing to say, I've forgiven you, me, all the years we silently passed by one another. I know I lost my way. I let a stranger, Noah, become a mirror that reflected the most fragile part of me. I'm not proud of it, but I won't deny it either. That moment was the final warning that I was slowly dying in the life I was living. You ask why I didn't say something sooner? Maybe because I was afraid you wouldn't really hear me. But if you're reading this now, then I believe you've started learning how to listen. I will come back, not to pick up where we left off, but to start over, if both of us truly want that. Not with dinners served on time, not with automatic small talk, but with a real life where love shows up every day through attention, through presence, through sharing. I don't need roses. I just need to be seen, to be heard, to be allowed to be me. Not just as a wife, a mother, a homemaker, but as a woman who still dreams, still feels, still needs. If one afternoon you hear a key turning in the lock, it means I'm trying one more time. If you still want to welcome me home, open the door. If not, leave this letter where it is. I'll understand. With love and care, I set the letter down on the table. My fingers were still trembling, not from anger, but because for the first time in years, I truly saw Anna. Saw the woman who once laughed brightly in our tiny kitchen, who once rested her head on my shoulder when the kids were still babbling their first mama mama. I lost her gradually, not because of someone else, but because I stopped seeing her. Stopped asking if she was tired, stopped noticing when she changed her hairstyle, her perfume, even parts of herself. Little by little, just hoping someone might notice, and then that someone wasn't me. Jealousy hit me, bitter and sharp, but not enough to cover the deeper ache. I had let another man truly listen to the woman I once promised to love for a lifetime. I walked toward the bedroom. Our wedding photo was still there on the dresser, its wooden frame now faded, Anna's smile just as gentle as the day it was taken. I used to think love didn't need many words, that being steady was enough. But I was wrong. Love means choosing to see each other every day, even in routine, even in silence, even in chaos. And I hadn't chosen that. And Anna, in her most vulnerable moment, had chosen a feeling I no longer gave her. I stood for a long time by the window. It was drizzling outside. Then I walked over to the table, picked up a blank sheet of paper, and wrote the first line. And if you're still willing to try, I will learn how to listen. 1 month later, Anna was no longer home. She left the very next day after leaving the letter. No warning, no explanation, no accusation. Just a brief sentence to the kids. Mom needs some time away. And then silence. David didn't try to call, not because he was angry, but because he knew at that moment words would only get in the way. Instead, he cleaned. For the first time in years, he scrubbed the kitchen without being asked. He learned how to make tea the way Anna liked it, 2 sugars, no cream. He called the kids down for dinner on time, asked about their day. And each night, he wrote to Anna letters he never sent. One Sunday afternoon, with the sky as blue as it had been in the early days of their love, David visited the small corner bookstore, Anna's favorite stop after work. He didn't expect anything. He just went as if reviving an old habit that once meant something. And then he saw her between the shelves of books on mindfulness and emotional healing. Hair tied low, wrapped in a gray knit cardigan. A little thinner, perhaps, but her eyes still held that same familiar light, the one that once made him believe he could protect her from the world. They looked at each other. No smile, no turning away, just looking. A long silence. David gently gripped the book in his hand, then stepped forward. I think the tea at home still tastes the way you like it. Anna blinked softly. You learned. I'm learning. A faint smile touched the corner of her lips. You still have the letters I wrote? David nodded. And I wrote a few more, if you'd ever like to read them. Anna didn't answer right away. She glanced out the window, then turned back to him. I'm not sure I'm ready to come back yet, but I'm ready to sit with you, have a cup of tea. David nodded, slowly, carefully, as if afraid to shatter something fragile. I can wait. And they stepped out of the bookstore, walking side by side. No touching, no promises. Just 2 people who had once lost each other, learning how to find their way back. I didn't think I would see him there. Not on such a clear, gentle afternoon. Not while I was standing in the middle of the bookstore aisle on healing, the very thing I still carry doubts about, even now. And then he appeared. He didn't say anything right away. No nervous chatter, no rushed questions. Just a look, direct, steady, quiet. Something had changed in David. Not on the outside, but within. I didn't see the old hurried detachment. Gone was the lost look of a man who once thought his life was enough. We talked about tea. Such a small thing, but it nearly brought me to tears. You still keep the letters I wrote? I asked, even though I already knew the answer, because I needed to hear it. Needed to know that somewhere in the silence, I hadn't disappeared completely from him. And when he said he had written more just for me, something ached in my chest. Not entirely because of hope, but because of tenderness. I didn't make any promises. I couldn't. I wasn't ready to return to a place that had once made me feel invisible, but I could sit with him. I could drink a cup of tea. I could begin with the smallest thing, at the little tea shop at the end of the street. David sat across from me. His hands gently cradled his cup. He no longer glanced at his phone out of habit. I noticed it and I saw he was listening, really listening. There was a time, I said softly, when I thought if I disappeared, you wouldn't even notice. I didn't look at him when I said it. My eyes followed the steam rising from the tea, soft and slow, like an old kind of comfort. I noticed, David said, his voice low. I just didn't know how to name it. I thought silence meant keeping peace, but it was slowly killing everything. And there was a pause between us. Not heavy, just still. I nodded slightly. I don't know if I've forgiven you yet, I whispered, but I know I want to see myself again, at least in your eyes. David set his cup down. I'm still learning how, Anna, but if you let me see you again, this time I won't look away. I looked at him, not as an estranged husband, not as a mistake from my past, but as someone learning how to love again, through listening, through presence, through stillness. I didn't promise anything that afternoon, but I stayed. And maybe in the quiet of a shared cup of tea, I would find myself again, and maybe even us.